Welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. This week on the program, we continue our discussion on the deepening political crisis in Senegal. The Constitutional Council on Thursday overruled President Macky Sall's decision to delay the presidential election till December, as announced last week, and the president pledged to organize presidential elections. He said in a statement, "The President of the Republic intends to fully implement the decision of the Constitutional Council to this end. The head of state will without delay carry out the consultations necessary to organize the presidential election as soon as possible." The Constitutional Council cancelled the decree that President Macky Sall signed earlier this month that postponed the election according to a judgment approved by a 7-member body. The judgment says the National Assembly's decision on February 5th to reschedule the vote was contrary to the Constitution. So, the Constitutional Council, noting the impossibility of organizing the presidential election on the date initially planned, advised the competent authorities to hold it as soon as possible. The Council also reiterated the fixed nature of the 5-year presidential term. While opposition figures praised the court's ruling, ECOWAS in a statement on Friday said it noted the court's decision and calls on the competent authorities to set a date for the presidential election in accordance with the decision. As for the African Union, head of the AU Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, said he hoped free and transparent elections would be held in Senegal soon. He said the situation in Senegal, a model country in terms of democracy, worries us to a great degree. His words. He also said he welcomed the government decision to follow the Constitutional Council's ruling. He said he hoped there would be a spirit of consensus to organize inclusive, free and transparent elections as quickly as possible. Note the key word here, as quickly as possible. In the meantime, protests, this time peaceful, held in the Senegalese capital, Dakar. Demonstrators donned black T-shirts emblazoned with "Our Sunu Election," meaning "Protect Our Election," the name of the civil society collective that organized the peaceful protest held in a festive atmosphere. Gendarmes were out in force around the march area, but they did not wear riot gear as they had during the demonstrations. Joining me now again is the former permanent secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi, is back with us to continue our discussion on Senegal with the latest developments. Ambassador Keshi, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and the last time we spoke, Senegal was in it was an uproar because, those protests were intensifying across the country, especially in the capital, Dakar. Unfortunately, 3 people have died since, those protests turned violent as security forces tried to quell the demonstrators. What do you make of what has happened between then and now? The latest development is that the Constitutional Court has ruled the postponement of the presidential elections are unconstitutional. But there is no assurance here that there will be elections in Senegal before April 2nd, when President Macky Sall's tenure ends.
It was because one of the reasons that the president of Senegal gave was because the Constitutional Court was accused of impropriety by one of the candidates. And he, jumped into that and decided that until that matter is resolved, election will be postponed. But now that the same Constitutional Court have taken a position and ruled that election must go on, I think that as a matter of honor, the outgoing president should honor that decision. Because, as we said the last time, Senegal has had a good run in terms of democracy. He started very well, and he's done relatively well to a large extent until the issue of, until his term is, until he sees that his term is coming to an end. I think he's supposed to leave office April 2nd or something like that.
Yes.
I just think that, he should respect the decision of the court and then take the necessary actions to ensure that an election or the presidential election takes place and that it is credible and acceptable by the people. I think it should allow all those who want to contest to contest. One of the reasons why people think, there are two reasons now apart from the first issue I gave. One, that he wants to stay longer. Two, that he has no confidence that the prime minister whom he has selected to succeed him has the capacity to win the election. And as I said in our last interview, I really do not understand why African leaders are bent on ensuring that they pick their successors. Let's have a free and fair election, and let the people choose who they want to rule them. But we must commend the Constitutional Court to start with. And I sincerely hope that that the president will respect the court's decision.
This court has been quite controversial. It was the same court that almost extended, if there was not an uproar back then, almost also extended a tenure for former President Abdoulaye Wade. So I don't think that the people actually trust the court's decision at this time. Do you think that things may have changed and that for some reason they could be more credible now because of the decision that they're taking actually favors the masses, the electorates in Senegal, rather than just the president?
Amarachi, the popular saying that there is joy in heaven over one sinner doing repentance. So if the Constitutional Court decides to do repentance with just this one decision to restore constitutionality, and to ensure that the election is conducted as per the Constitution, look, we should commend it. Whatever they've done in the past, let it be the past. But we are now dealing with the president. And the president is the president, Maxali, is not interested in quitting. But the Constitutional Court says, no, your tenure ends April 2nd or thereabout, and that we should allow election to take place. So is the president now has that responsibility of respecting not just the decision of the court, but the wishes of the people. Look, Senegal has had a good run in terms of democracy. They've not had a coup. They've not had any interruption of government since its independence. And what Saleh is doing now, Maxali is doing now, could actually end up one of these days provoking a coup in Senegal. And I sincerely hope that does not happen. It's left to the president to do the right thing. I always make this point, that when we say leadership is challenging in this part of the world, it's because the leaders are not doing the right thing. And this is why leadership is challenging. I've never heard, and I repeat this, I've said it again, I've never heard the American president or the British prime minister or the German chancellor or anybody saying leadership is challenging. It's only in this part of the world. And that's because our leaders do not do the right thing most of the time.
Yeah, give an example. Nigeria, for one, the current economic realities, people are saying, don't blame the president for this one, but who are we going to hold responsible, for what we're currently going through? But back to the Constitutional Court in Senegal. There was something the court said about the conduct of the next elections. It actually, encourages the president to conduct elections as soon as possible. That's open to interpretation, because as soon as possible for President Sall could be that December 15 date that he initially announced, right?
Sure. But look, if the president wants to leave office gloriously, he shouldn't begin to interpret that again to say, look, election will be held in December. No. The Constitutional Court, I think, also made it clear that his tenure ends in April. I think April 2nd. And there's enough time between now and April for him to conduct an election if he has nothing up his sleeves. This is where, again, ECOWAS is sitting down watching events in Senegal. ECOWAS should send a delegation to persuade the president to abide by the constitution of the court and to ensure that things do not break down in Senegal. ECOWAS shouldn't wait to be reactive. It should be proactive. We have currently a lot of problems within the ECOWAS sub-region. Let's not ask Senegal to it. And the only way to prevent anything happening is for the chairman of ECOWAS to see this as a way of, beginning to resolve some of the crisis in the region by sending a delegation to the president to say, please honor the constitution. But then, when I say this, I also begin to wonder what would be the reaction of the president of Senegal, given that we ourselves had problems with our own election. And this is why when we conduct election, the umpires should be aware of the fact that if a president is not elected based on the wishes and desire of the people, it also becomes difficult for the president to operate credibly internationally, because everybody will say, look, he's coming to give us advice on ensuring democracy, what's going on in its own country. Let's bear this in mind. But that notwithstanding, ECOWAS should be proactive, send a powerful delegation, maybe of old presidents around the region, who knows the president very well, who's respected. I know General Obasanjo, Chief Obasanjo is respected around the region, and he certainly can be a good ambassador to, talk to this gentleman in Senegal. But apart from that, everybody, the Americans have expressed their opinion. The rest of the world, democratic world have not been too happy with what's going on in Senegal. And the president should read the tea leaves and please let Senegal be, and let Senegal constitutional run, a democratic run which has been acclaimed as one of the best in the region because of the fact that it has not had any disruption since independence. For goodness sake, let it continue. There's still life after being a president. Let's begin to encourage our president. When it's your time, please go peacefully.
So about what you said, ECOWAS sending a delegation to Senegal, I'm just noting here that, the Senegalese president, Macky Sall, has had no interactions yet with ECOWAS, despite ECOWAS sending communiques and letters. The recent one it sent on Friday urges, again, all stakeholders in the electoral process to comply with the decision of the Constitutional Council and calls on the competent authorities to set a date for the presidential election in accordance with the decision. And you talked about someone, maybe past presidents who know President Sall, imploring on him to conduct these elections. Do you think that this might be an opportunity for maybe the Nigerian president, Bola Tinubu, to step in? Because he was scheduled to hold a meeting with President Sall last Monday to discuss this matter, but that visit was delayed. Do you think this is an opportunity for him to step in and possibly convince him on when to hold elections? Could he do that on behalf of ECOWAS?
Well, today, President Tinubu is the chairman of ECOWAS, and he has the responsibility to help resolve the crisis in Senegal. The press releases that have been issued by ECOWAS is in the right direction. But I'm saying a lot is achieved by face-to-face diplomatic, contact. And quite frankly, the Nigerian president has been in office, and the Nigerian foreign minister has been in office since, I think, May last year, if my memory serves me right. And I'm still looking forward to when a delegation will do a sweep in terms of visit across ECOWAS. And it becomes more imperative now that we are chairman of ECOWAS. The president should have, and if he has not, he should consider doing a trip around the region as soon as he can. And look, we should institutionalize this. This is what some of the advanced countries do in terms of, when a new president comes to office. For example, they guarantee that any president that comes into office in the United States is going to make his first trip, either to Canada or to Mexico. And the same you find in some of these European countries. They go to their greatest and the closest allies. We've done this in the past. And I remember when Chief Olusegun Obasanjo came to, He actually did a marathon visit, starting from Benin, across the region, I think in 2 days or in one whole day. I remember this very clearly because at 4 a.m. in the late President Ayadema's hometown, we were meeting to resolve the Sierra Leone crisis at 4 p.m. in the morning. That's when the president arrived for that meeting. So the president of Nigeria, as the chairman of ECOWAS, should undertake such a visit, whistle-stop visit across the region. First, to stamp his authority in the region. Secondly, to, begin to persuade his colleagues one-on-one that, look, they need to do a lot more to ensure that ECOWAS as a regional body survives these present challenges.
Very quickly, Ambassador, what could happen if this political crisis continues in Senegal? What could happen within the country and in the region?
History will just repeat itself. If this crisis continues and the president insists on having his way, do not rule out the possibility of a violent change of government. But the president can save the country. I keep saying the president can save the country by doing the right thing. And the right thing is to conduct a credible election and quietly leave office April 2nd, 2024.
Ambassador Joe Keshi, always appreciate your thoughts and analysis. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
The 37th Africa Union Summit held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where leaders discussed on the central theme of Educate and Skill Africa for the 21st century, building resilient education systems for increased access to inclusive, lifelong, quality and relevant learning in Africa. Leaders agreed that the achievement of Aspiration 1 of Agenda 2063 for a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development requires that Africa make significant investments in education with the aim of developing human and social capital through an education and skills revolution emphasizing innovation, science and technology. On to bilateral relations now. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu met with the Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva on Sunday. According to the President's Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngalale, their discussions were quite fruitful, especially as it centered on comprehensive strengthening of bilateral ties in all fields. President Lula said Nigeria and Brazil had once had a trade volume of more than $10 billion in the past. It's now plummeted to $1.6 billion. He emphasized his determination to strengthen bilateral relations. President Tinubu said Nigeria was witnessing a leap forward despite some short-term reform pains as his administration is removing all encumbrances to business. On Saturday, President Tinubu addressed African leaders, speaking on the military takeovers in the West African region and the subsequent exit of nations from ECOWAS. He said disagreements over the unconstitutional changes of government should not mean a permanent rupture of the abiding lines of regional affinity and cooperation. He also told leaders his administration will engage the African Union Commission to ensure Nigeria hosts the African Central Bank in line with the vision of the Abuja Treaty.
If we are to be Africans we seek, we must fulfill our promises to our people. In the statement regarding our intention, yes, as chairman of ECOWAS, I will say emphatically here that we seek to harm no one. We seek to collaborate with those nations in transition. Yet, we cannot submit ourselves to impasse that will create future problems to generations. We strive for a peaceful, strong, united West Africa, and our interest is bigger than that of only one single person. Thus, out of the dust and fog of misunderstanding and acrimony, we must seize the the change to create an era of trust and accord. We are doing everything possible, front door, back door diplomacy, to really bring peace and stability and democratic governance to West Africa and to Africa as a whole. On the theme of this year, education is essential to a durable solution to challenges confronting our continent. Help to achieve the Agenda 2063 objective of a peaceful and secure Africa. I speak Africa not only of education in terms of the benign use of science and technology to improve the material standard of our people. Africa must also become a better educated in the humane art of democratic practice and conflict resolution. This year's theme encourages us to remodel our educational system to fit these goals. In Nigeria, my administration is devoting ample resources to promoting education, including feeding our children in schools, and investment in telecommunication and technology needed to flourish in 21st century. Admission of the AU into the G20. Admission of our union into the group of G20 is a welcome step in our long-standing demand to play our fair and proper role in the global stage. Nigeria will work closely with South Africa and others to justify the present and our representation in the continent. In a similar vein, we remain focused on equitable reform of the composition of the United Nations Security Council. Institutional reform of African Union have been placed on our lap this morning. And Mr. Chairman, yes, we need that reform in order to engender good governance, development, and democracy in the 21st century. On counter-terrorism, violent extremists undermine our effort towards democratic society, where the rule of law outweighs the rule of armed might. While progress has been made, it is also timely that we reassess the decisions adopted in Malabo regarding terrorism. African Counter-Terrorism Summit, as such, I humbly extend my personal invitation to African Counter-Terrorism Summit in April in Abuja. This summit aims to expand our discussions beyond military and law enforcement remedies to more comprehensively tackle the root causes of violent extremism, such as poverty, inadequate political access, and propagation of hateful ideologies.
And now a quick check on other discussions in diplomatic circles.
The chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abike Dabiri Erewa, has congratulated Ambassador Amina Smaila, Nigeria's Consul General in Atlanta, Georgia, for her recognition and commendation by the House of Representatives of the state of Georgia, thus making history as the first ever recognition of an African diplomat in its 247-year history. Mrs. Dabiri Erewa described Smaila as an exceptional and distinguished Nigerian and diplomat with deep concerns for fellow citizens. She said she was not surprised about the well-deserved honor, going by Smaila's pedigree as an outstanding and intelligent public servant with exceptional service in the Nigeria Foreign Service for over 2 decades. In the resolution 647 moved by Representative Okoye of the 102 district, the House resolves to recognize Ambassador Amina Smaila for her efficient, effective, unselfish and dedicated public service and extend the most sincere best wishes for continued health and happiness. The World Health Organization says Gaza's Nasser hospital is no longer functional following an Israeli raid. The IDF troops had entered the complex on Thursday, saying intelligence indicated hostages taken by Hamas were being held there. The IDF described its operation in Nasser as precise and limited and accused Hamas of cynically using hospitals for terror. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus said on X, Nasser Hospital in Gaza is not functional anymore after a week-long siege followed by the ongoing raid. The ambassadors of the UK and the United States on Sunday laid flowers to honor Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who was reported dead in prison. US Ambassador Lynn Tracy and Britain's Nigel Casey were pictured paying their respects at a memorial in Moscow. Navalny's allies believe he was murdered on the orders of President Vladimir Putin. Prison authorities say he suffered sudden death syndrome.
This is where we end the program this week. Thanks for joining us. You can watch other editions of Diplomatic Channel on the channel's TV playlist on YouTube. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.